Slavery in America began when the first African slaves were brought to the North American colony of Jamestown, Virginia, in 1619 to aid in the production of such lucrative crops as tobacco. Slavery was practiced throughout the American colonies in the 17th and 18th centuries, and African American slaves helped build the economic foundations of the new nation. The invention of the cotton gin in 1793 solidified the central importance of slavery to the South's economy. By the mid-19th century, America's westward expansion, along with a growing abolition movement in the North, would provoke a great debate over slavery that would tear the nation apart in the Civil War. Though the Union victory freed the nation's 4 million slaves, the legacy of slavery continued to influence American history, from the years of Reconstruction, 1865 to 1877, to the Civil Rights Movement that emerged in the 1960s, a century after emancipation.
And they're coming in right over there. They've been pushing, and now they want in. Well, they ain't gonna come in. We got our right. Damn.
Not here. Not now. Not ever.
Hey, y'all, look at that sign out there. Welcome to Lamar. You think they mean welcome?
They ain't gonna be in my grandson's class. Not here, they ain't.
And who's gonna stop them? You all talk so fine. Never, never, never. But it's now, and they're here.
They don't mean welcome. Hasn't been one white kid to show up to class with us. And the court order was almost 3 weeks ago.
They're gonna wish they were never born. Watch those nigger-loving state troopers. They got tear gas.
Governor McMayer said right on television that South Carolina's run out of time and run out of court.
Yeah? Well, those folks moving on that first bus ain't listening to no governor.
Man, they got axe handles and they're running over those troopers.
What are they trying to do?
You girls get on the floor. Quick.
Get down, Gola. They're breaking in the window.
Segregation is a major part of American history. Throughout the 1900s, nearly every public location was extremely changed to enhance segregation. All forms of transportation, classrooms, locations of restrooms, and even locations of water fountains were separated for blacks and whites. Beginning in the 1800s and carrying out through the 1900s, attacks by cult-like groups were made on the blacks. The most common group was the Ku Klux Klan. With all these events happening in the public, similar drastic changes were being made behind the closed doors of public schools. Many blacks were slaves throughout the 1800s, which led to the dilemma of segregation in education to be more common in the 1900s.
The most common set of laws associated with segregation in public schools are the Jim Crow laws. Introduced in the 1870s, these laws were in effect well into the 1900s. Aside from being a set of rules that were against blacks, they became a way of life. The first half of the 20th century, black Georgians continued to mount isolated protests against Jim Crow by petitioning local governments, organizing public demonstrations, and undertaking other, more subtle forms of resistance. Jim Crow laws in U.S. history are any of the laws that enforced racial segregation in the South between the end of the informal Reconstruction period in 1877 and the beginning of a strong civil rights movement in the 1950s.
It was not until 1954, with the Brown versus Board of Education, that people really realized that the term separate but equal that was commonly used really wasn't true when comparing schools that black children attended opposed to those white children attended. On May 17, 1954, it was unanimously ruled by the Supreme Court that having separate schools for black students and white students was a violation of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. This amendment states, 1. All persons born and naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. This obvious violation of the U.S. Constitution was not recognized until a series of court cases were argued in an attempt to make the violation clearer and gain equal rights, especially in terms of education. The Brown versus Board of Education trial helped to reverse the separate but equal phrase used to describe public facilities that was adopted after the trial of Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896. In the Brown versus Board of Ed case, Chief Justice Earl Warren wrote the opinion, "We conclude that in the field of public education, the doctrine of separate but equal has no place. Separate educational facilities are inherently unequal." This eventually led to the end of segregation in public schools. Not only were black students affected by this change, but black teachers were also. As integration became more common, black teachers faced challenges. The leading black teachers in the South gathered in Hot Springs, Arkansas in October 1954, months after it was decided that segregation in public schools was unconstitutional.
Major characters that also helped lead the Southern United States to integration were Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks. Martin Luther King Jr. came of age during a time when Jim Crow laws reigned supreme, a time when separate but equal was the accepted doctrine, a time when things were always separate but never equal for blacks and whites. This was a time when blacks were not permitted to use the same stores as whites, to stay in the same hotels, or to attend the same schools. Oppression was practiced throughout America. King envisioned a society free from the constraints of racism, a society that was colorblind.
Civil rights activist Rosa Parks was born on February 4, 1913, in Tuskegee, Alabama. Her refusal to surrender her seat to a white passenger on a Montgomery, Alabama bus spurred a city-wide boycott. The city of Montgomery had no choice but to lift the law requiring segregation on public buses. Rosa Parks received many recognitions during her lifetime, including the NAACP's highest award. Although racism may still exist today, it is on a much smaller scale than it was in previous years. All public transportation, facilities, and classrooms are now happily integrated.